Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian McCollum, and I'm here today at the Springfield Armory National Historic Site, taking a look at some of the really cool and rare experimental M1 Garands in their reference collection. Specifically today, we have the M1E5, E for experimental. There's a whole series of experimental M1 varieties, making changes to all sorts of different elements of the rifle. This one was intended to be a paratrooper's rifle. Paratroopers primarily use the M1 Carbine. That was a very light, very handy, very short gun with the paratroopers folding stock on it, but it was potentially underpowered. It used the .30 carbine cartridge, which is almost more of an upscale pistol round than it is a proper rifle round like .30-06. The idea of perhaps having a full-powered rifle that was short and compact enough for paratroopers to jump with was a potentially very appealing idea to the military. So in late 1943, someone in the 93rd Infantry Division proactively made themselves a shortened M1 and then submitted it back to basically Army headquarters for consideration. The Army Infantry Board thought this was potentially a useful and interesting idea, again, for paratroopers, and so they sent it over to Springfield Armory, where we are here today, and told Springfield to get to work on it, like figure out if we can make this work. So in January of 1944, John Garand began work on a shortened M1 rifle, and it became the M1E5 project. Now, they did a couple of different things. They shortened the barrel, but they also, this isn't a regular M1 barrel, it's a lightened M1 barrel. And of course it has a folding stock. Now the original version of this rifle did not have the pistol grip. They only made one of these guns, it's this one, and over the course of its testing they upgraded it, or they modified it, specifically the stock, a couple times. So what we have here is the final iteration. There are pictures still of the original version with the same folding stock design, which incidentally, John Garand got a patent for this stock design, although it wasn't granted until 1949. But without the pistol grip, which had to have been a really awkward gun to use. So anyway, let's take a closer look and let me show you specifically what they did with the barrel. All right, there it is. That is the M1E5 with the stock folded. It has a very janky looking pistol grip, but again, worth pointing out, the original version of this, the first iteration of this, did not have a pistol grip. It just has this sort of panographic, as they describe it, folding, underfolding stock. So the way this works, you've got the two sets of struts here, and this just pivots out. It's going to lock into position on that little lever. So to fold it, you just pull this in until that hook clears inside the lever, then it folds down. Now, I do have to say, this stock looks really flimsy and janky in pictures, and in person, it actually is a lot more, holds a lot more confidence. It's actually a pretty secure stock. It may not be comfortable, but it doesn't feel like it's going to collapse on you. And the way the stock hooks, the hinge mechanism is designed here, don't really lend themselves to the stock collapsing. I think this is it feels like it's a better design than the AK's underfolding stock. Again, not comfortable at all. Your cheek weld is absolute garbage on this, but mechanically it seems stable. Just for reference sake, if we can line these up here, the length of pull is exactly the same on the folding stock E5 as it is on a standard M1. So when the stock's extended, it's the same length as a regular wood stock. The wooden section of the stock is pretty much normal, with the exception of these two little cutouts in the front to accommodate the hinges right there. So that collapses in like that. We should definitely take a look at the receiver markings here because they actually designated this U.S. Carbine Caliber .30 M1E5, Springfield Armory, serial number 1. This wasn't an M1 rifle. How exactly they were going to mesh that with the M1 Carbine Caliber .30 that we know as the M1 Carbine, I don't know. This kind of takes the M1 thing a little bit farther. At any rate, if it was formally accepted, it would have gotten a different designation than E5, but that's the only marking on there. Disassembly is exactly the same as a regular M1. So use a little plastic pin to give myself help there. Just take the fire control group out, which is totally normal and standard, and then the stock comes off the action. And the front end of the stock here is pretty much normal. We just have this metal end cap on there. Now, after the first testing with a regular traditional sort of stock without the pistol grip, they recommended the addition of a pistol grip to make it a little more controllable. This is the design they came up with. Again, it looks super flimsy in photos, but it is steel, and in handling it, it does seem to actually be sturdy enough to work. Why they gave it this design, I have no idea. It's sort of big enough when the stock's folded like this, but when you unfold the stock, these lower stock bars really obscure a lot of your ability to get a grip on the pistol grip. Like you can't hold it up high because the stock's in the way, and it still seems pretty uncomfortable to me. Better than no pistol grip, but like really, John Garand, absolute gun designing brilliance, and that's what he comes up with. Maybe it was an intern responsible for the pistol grip. It is also interesting to note that they went ahead and put a grenade launcher sight bracket on the stock, and this was on both the pistol grip version and the non-pistol grip version. I guess the idea was normally you have a grenade launcher sight that's about this long that clips onto this mounting bracket. Normally that bracket would be out here on the front of the stock, and presumably on the folding stock, the folder interferes with the grenade launcher bracket. So they just put it on the front leg of the stock here. Interesting choice, but that's what they did. All right, and now to look at the barrel, I went ahead and pulled the recoil spring off. The barrel is not just shortened. This is an 18-inch barrel, and of course still in 30-06, so it's about 6 inches shorter than the original M1. They also lightened the barrel, so there are two big scalloped cuts back here to remove material, and you can see they actually turned down the barrel in this area. So you can see where it gets a little bit bigger right there. They turned it down here again to remove just a little bit of weight. Overall, they managed to reduce the weight of the M1E5 by about 1.3 pounds. That'd be a little over half a kilogram from the standard M1. And just for comparison's sake, here is a standard M1, and you can see that the back end of the barrel is this whole full profile all the way up to the op rod. They don't have these cuts for lightning, and then it is also cylindrical or nearly cylindrical along this whole section instead of being reduced in diameter there. So there's the difference in overall dimensions. The gas port has been moved back the same amount that the barrel has been shortened. The front handguard has been left off entirely on the M1E5. Just got rid of it, they don't need it. And that's pretty much what you got there. So the M1E5 was complete and ready for testing in May of 1944. It went to Aberdeen Proving Grounds for formal evaluation, and a number of problems came back from Aberdeen's reports. So we'll start with the stock. The stock was considered pretty uncomfortable, and they recommended addition of a pistol grip to it. Makes perfect sense to me. They went ahead and added this pistol grip, which you already saw up close. I don't really understand the design of that pistol grip. It's still really small and clunky, and if you're gonna put a pistol grip on it at all, you might as well put on one that's a little more useful than this. At any rate, that didn't solve the fundamental problems with the gun, and so it wasn't ever adopted. Ultimately, what happened with this is not so much that they said, okay, it has problems, so we're done, and it's scrapped. Instead, it just really took a lower priority to other developmental projects, most notably the T20 project, which was the development of a select fire box magazine fed version of the M1. That was the one that was seen as really important because that was potentially going to be the new standard infantry rifle for everybody instead of just a replacement specialty weapon. So this fizzles out into nothing because, well, fundamentally the biggest problem with it was Aberdeen came back and said it has too much blast, too much recoil, too much concussion. It was something like 80% more flash, muzzle flash, than a standard M1, and 50% more muzzle blast, as well as an unspecified amount more recoil. Now this is an 18-inch barrel 30-06, not that different from an 18-inch barrel 308, and today we don't necessarily think of an 18-inch 308 as having so much blast and concussion as to be combat ineffective and not useful for a military. Heck, the whole G3 family of rifles have 18-inch barrels, and they don't seem to be an issue. I think the bigger problem with this comes from the fact that US soldiers were not wearing any sort of ear protection, and the difference between the blast of an 18-inch 30-06 with earplugs, even kind of sketchy, questionable earplugs, and no ear protection at all is pretty substantial. Troops were acclimated to shooting full-length 24-inch M1 Garands without ear protection. And by acclimated, I mean they just basically were proactively deafened. All those guys have massive permanent hearing damage, which is why, by the way, there aren't a lot of World War II vets left anymore. But when there were, and you talk to them, they were all deaf. Shooting without ear protection is why. At any rate, shooting without ear protection with a shortened little carbine like this would indeed be really unpleasant. And I can understand why the Army would look at that and go, yeah, it's not worth the trade-off. Anyway, those problems were kind of separate from or distinct from the problems of the stock. Fixing the stock up with a pistol grip, if you consider this to be fixed, didn't change any of that. And the project was let go. They opted not to put this into production. So there was only this one example manufactured, as you saw, serial number 1. Now it would come back with the T26, but the T26 is a subject for a separate video, and we will cover that a bit later. I'd like to give a really big thanks to Springfield Armory, National Historic Site, for giving me access to their reference collection to pull this out, literal one-of-a-kind unicorn gun, to film and show to you guys. This is actually on display here at the Springfield Museum. They have a really nice museum covering US small arms development from the birth of the nation all the way through the end of Springfield Armory in the 1960s, including a bunch of interesting prototypes and developmental guns and some other really weird stuff like this out on display. So if you find yourself here in Springfield, Massachusetts, definitely take some time to stop in and visit the museum. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.